a lot of the documentation, it's still very much about flow and all the rest. But actually, the name has had a last-minute change, which is basically it's going to be called Visual Workflow. It's still the same product. It's just we had a last-minute name change, and you still build flows with Visual Workflow. So that's what the name is going to be going forward. So if you're seeing the name, you guys have had a lot of names thrown at you recently. So this is yet another. We promise that we'll stop changing the name from here on in. Okay, so the purpose of this call is really just to give you guys a quick run through of flow and visual workflow and how it works. It's not so much a training call. What I really want to do is give you guys a full, kind of end-to-end run through and try to do it quite quickly. So some of the things that I show, it may you may kind of go, whoa, that's moving really fast. I don't really understand how that works or why you did that, or that just seems a little thing. What I'm trying to do really is give you guys a sense of the breadth of the features. So it's going to be heavy on software, light on the slides, and just showing you kind of generally what's available. And I'll try to give you a sense of maybe pointing you at various parts of the software if you want to hear more. But really the idea here is just to give you kind of a familiarity with what is this visual workflow, and how can I kind of get going with it, and what does it just sounds reasonable. I will get back in, and hopefully the bigging will get a little less as we proceed. Okay, so a few slides, and then I'm just going to cut straight into software. We're going to build something and show you. If you have any questions, feel free to either post them or ask. But I'm going to try and leave a reasonable amount of Q&A time at the end. So, okay, visual workflow. I have to still show Safe Harbor because it's not technically GA yet. It's GA like really soon. It's like in a week, so or 2 weeks. So we're pretty much there. Just a very quick recap on what it is. There's basically two parts to visual workflow. There's a designer, which is this place where you rapidly build your business processes. That is still a desktop tool, even when we go GA. And basically you deploy them out into the cloud by basically through the setup area. You kind of deploy them out into the cloud so you can then use these within Salesforce. And the great thing about visual workflow and flow is that now it's entirely native on the Salesforce platform. So the runtime engine is within Salesforce. It's on the Salesforce stack. It's running all within the Salesforce code base. So it's native now in terms of the runtime engine. But the desktop, the designer, remains for a while longer until we get it completed at the end of this year. So where does it fit generally in things? So hopefully this won't cause too much confusion. But so basically, you have the workflow rules. I'm sure you guys have. Hopefully, some of you had played with that if you're Salesforce veterans. For activity monitoring, alerts, and triggers, and that kind of, campaign management, things like that. The approval processes for, routing records through the organization for specifically approval style processes. And visual workflow actually is not connected to the workflow rules yet, but it basically allows you to do page flow, dynamic forms, and the flow of rules so that you can, kind of create these more complex multi-step processes, but they're much more on the user-focused end. So what we're trying to do over the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes, is we're going to basically be bringing these technologies together to a unified business process, really business process management framework on the platform so that we kind of have a unified way of building business processes. And that's really the job of my team for the next while, is basically fulfilling on that. And we're going to start by bringing out this very cool web designer at the end of the year. Okay, so how does the visual workflow piece is pretty straightforward. You draw the process, you save it up to the platform, and then somebody follows a wizard. So rather than having the kind of the detail pages and the data entry record forms that you're used to, the flow actually sits on top of the data model and guides somebody through a business process. And that business process can incorporate forms, just like you're used to, or it can incorporate data management, multi-records, not just one record, so we're not tied to a single object. You can hit as many objects as you like. We can generate documentation. We can execute business rules and do calculations and rules together. So for things like insurance quotations, etc. We can do sending out emails, but we can also you can write integrations with other third-party applications. So through the power of Apex, you can incorporate Apex code into your flow to integrate with other systems. So we think it's a really powerful addition to the platform, certainly in terms of really making the platform work harder to the way that you guys work, rather than having to maybe click around as much between the tabs and the forms and the records, is that Flow can hopefully simplify some of that experience for your well-trodden business processes. So developers can also do some really neat stuff with Flow, and I'm going to show some of that today as well, which is they can build build more complex UI using Visual4. So if the user experience needs to be spruced up a bit, maybe you're doing a website using a flow for, say, like an online quote for a product, or maybe insurance quote is a good example, maybe car insurance is another good example, helping people find the right product, or whether being troubleshooting a network issue or troubleshooting a device problem. You may want to expose those through a website or through your portal and want those to look brand consistent or do some really neat things with mashups or what have you. That's what you can do with the Visual4 piece. If you want to build integrations with the other applications, as I mentioned, you can do that with Apex, so you can build plugins. And then also we have an Apex controller, which lets you do some neat things, again, with kind of with the UI, but also lets you do some quite interesting things with the way you use Flow or package your flows in with your applications. Okay, so I was just going to basically stop there and go straight into a demo, actually, which is not a day in the life of an insurance advisor, actually, so that's incorrect there. I'm actually going to show you, we're actually going to build a real flow. So let me show that to you now. And I'm just going to give you a quick tour of the software as we do it. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you the GA. And if you have Flow enabled already in the pilot, if you refresh your sandbox, and if you're running on, I think it's CS0, I think if your sandbox has been upgraded, I know that there's still a cascade of upgrades happening right now, but if your sandbox has been upgraded to the Spring 11 release, all you need to do is refresh your sandbox, and you'll have access to the GA product and Flow. So I'd encourage you to do that. Once you've done that, effectively, as you guys may have seen, is under the Create menu in your Setup area, we now have, under the Workflow and Approvals area, we have this Flows link. And that's really where you build out your visual workflow. This is where you basically upload them and manage them. We also have the download link for the desktop designer. So if you're asking, where do I get the designer from, it's not web-based, so where do I get it from, where do I download it from? Just from here. It's a Windows-only desktop, but when we get over to the web, it'll be for all browsers and operating systems. But for now, it's a Windows-based application. Download it from there. The installation is pretty straightforward. I won't walk you guys through that. It's a pretty standard software installation on Windows. And then if you're running the Flow Designer right now on the version, I think it's version 6 at the moment, I would recommend upgrading to the version 7, which is available in the sandbox. If you are running the Visual Process Manager Designer, I would definitely encourage you to download the new Flow Designer. They're not the same designer. There are some variations between the two. So if you like, a Spark can be migrated forward to a Flow cannot be migrated backwards to a Spark. I would definitely encourage you to do any new process development on the Flow Designer going forward. So this is the admin area, and we'll come back to this, but this is basically, so you need that desktop designer. This is also where you manage your flows that you've deployed, and we'll go through that end to end. I just want to say that's where you get the designer from. So assuming that we have all gone through the process of installing it, it then becomes available in your Windows system, and if you've got the version 6, you'll see that you can have that alongside with the version 7 as well. Actually, I think I might have put this. So what we've done is made it possible for you guys to run the two side by side, so that you don't need to kind of just any issues in the pilot and the GA designer. So what I thought I would do is take you guys through the process of building out a flow to illustrate the features around, creating a form, maybe creating a business rule of some kind, and then, integrating with some Apex code, showing how you can embed it in a Visualforce page, showing managing some of the data in Salesforce. And I think I can do all of that in the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes. I'll have to get my sort of gloves off and see how we do. And so what I'd like you to do is just, when I go through this, is just kind of think about what I'm, try and highlight the features that I think are important to sort of recognize. But don't see this as a tutorial. I wouldn't expect you guys to be able to do all this in one go. But I just wanted to give you a sense of how it all fits together. So I'll start with that. So what we're looking to do is build a process that allows our advisors, in this case, to provide mortgage quotes. So first thing we'll do is we'll give this flow a name, which we call it mortgage. And I'll just give it a nice name for it so we've got it and it's referenceable. The unique name is actually how we identify the flow in the system. So if you reuse a unique name, the system will think it's the same flow. So make sure you do have unique names when you use unique names. It's not a problem if you overwrite a flow and you accidentally didn't change the unique name. We have a versioning system, so we'll catch your old version for you, so you don't need to worry about that. Or, you do need to have a copy somewhere in your file system. You can't download flows from Salesforce at the moment. They're upload, and so you need to kind of manage your own versions yourself. But so let's start with a mortgage quote. So the way we would typically say you build a process is you might start by thinking, well, what is the process? So what we have is something called a flare, which lets you kind of set out the bones of your process. So let's do that now. And so I'm going to place flares that they're just really allowing me to kind of set out what is this thing. We called it a flare in informal state. It's really like a to-do note to kind of say we need to do something with this. It's not yet at the stage where it's a deployable application, if you like. It's still just, I'm just making notes to myself of what this is. This might be something that you would do in Visio typically, but you can also do it here. So I'm going to map out the process. And the first step in the process for our mortgage quote is I think we need to do just check for the lead, maybe do a lead deduplication exercise just to kind of check, do we have a lead in the system? That's probably step one. Step two along the way is probably something like, collect the quote information so we actually can generate a quotation for them. So that'll follow our lead identification, deduplication, if you like, in terms of the process. We then probably want to do something like we want to generate a quote. And that may be that we're using, in this case, we might do a call out to something a developer wrote to do the quote. And then what we'll do is we'll then email the quote to the person we're speaking to so that they've got that. This is what we think the process is, if you like. And then probably the next stage of the process is we'll probably set up a task to review the quote after we've sent it so that we kind of prompt ourselves to make sure we speak to that customer again. And then we're probably done. That's probably the end of the process. I could put in like a little done thing here. So we go through all that. That is the scope of the process as we see it. So the flare element is really there just to kind of map out a general sense of what the flow is. It's not really expecting to run this. It's just simply a picture. So now we kind of understand what we're building. We're going to be doing more around this, around sort of conceptual mapping of business processes. You don't have to kind of think, if I'm using flow, I have to implement something. It's like, no, it could just be you're conceptually mapping out a flow, just like what you would do in Visio. So we've got that conceptually mapped out now. So first things you need to do with the designer in terms of, now we're sort of thinking in terms of our process, we now like actually to build out. We've all agreed that this is the quotation process that we want, and we now want to build out. So a few things